how we got here, how these changes came down and what led to them.
Well, so let me go through the process a little bit first. I think that's a good way to start, because I think a lot of times we just put something in a cart and it goes away and nobody knows where away is. So I think the recycling process is really important to understand. So it starts with the consumer putting some material in the cart, and then it comes to somebody like Republic Services, a collector who picks up the recycling, and we take it to somebody like Garten, who's a processor. And there are other processors or other hauling companies, but that's pretty much the basic system. What happens from there that I think most people don't think about is that material all has to be sorted. And we're going to talk a lot about keeping material clean, and Galen's going to really talk about that. But I like to tell people that, you know, the processors aren't sorting just my waste. It's all of ours. And I think there's some ownership on the public to really make that a more pleasant job for those folks by keeping material clean and keeping contamination out. So that material all gets sorted, and then it's up to the processors to find markets for that material. And once it's sorted, it really is a commodity, just like any other commodity. And the quality of that commodity is partly how we determine price. And then that trickles down to the consumer in the rates. So this is the process. For many, many years, China has accepted almost everything. And we have sent them almost everything. So we kind of got into this together, I think. China now is saying, we want to clean up our air quality. We want to clean our environment as well. And I think as Americans and Oregonians specifically, we really want to support that. So they have kind of put a halt to the contamination that's coming in the recycling. And I think, ironically, domestic recyclers don't want curbside recycling because it's too dirty and too contaminated. So China's now saying, we want that same clean material that everybody else wants. And that's kind of how we got where we are. China just recycles about 60% of the world's recycling, and so they are a pretty big fish. And they are when they say stop, everybody has to reset. So that's how we got where we are.
Great. If we can talk real quick about sort of wishful recycling. So
we see a lot of that. And I have to admit, before I started working at Garten, I was kind of like that too, where I would have something, you know, like a garden hose and go, well, surely this must be recyclable. And I'd throw it in and say, oh, they'll figure it out. The problem is that we get a lot of things like that. And when you, again, back to Julie in the process, we have both people sorting on conveyor belts where the material is going by at several miles an hour, and we have machines. And so a hose will get wound up in the machine of the hauler, it'll get wound up in our machines. Our people don't have time to get the pile of hoses and get the pile of baby pools and all the other things that shouldn't be in there. And so it ends up in the trash. And we have spent up to $60,000 a month on our trash bills just getting rid of the things people gave us that shouldn't have been there in the first place.
You know, I recently talked to somebody who told me that her husband puts things in so we'll learn how to recycle them. And so I just want to make that real clear. That's not how the process works. Right. We're pretty much learning as we go with what we can put in now, but we have a pretty good handle on what goes in. And just because we put it in that cart doesn't mean it's going to get recycled. Right. And ultimately, all of these steps in between make it a really expensive way to throw that material away. So the most efficient thing people can do is learn what to put it in the proper way, recycle right, and then throw away what you have to. And I'll throw out a plug for waste reduction too, because I think that's the most important thing. Just moving material from one cart to another isn't really reducing waste. It's just a different processor. Landfill's a processor, and a material recovery facility is a processor. So what we really have to do is reduce that total amount of waste. That's true sustainability.
Great. So Gaelen, earlier you had mentioned, you know, the percentage of problematic materials that you as a processor have come across. Like what did that make up in the total?
Right. So about 80% of what people give us is great. It's cardboard, it's plastic milk jugs, it's paper, aluminum, things like that. Super. They're doing a great job, 80% of it. About 15% of what comes in the door is trash. It's stuff that should never have come in the door, that we don't take, that doesn't belong in the blue bin. And the changes only affect about 4% of the stuff that comes in. So if we could get people just to stop putting in the trash the stuff that shouldn't be in there, never should have been there, things like plastic bags and styrofoam, diapers, things like a big items, like we get chainsaws that come through and bowling balls, and they wreck our machinery, they contaminate the other good recycling, and they're a cost to the consumer in the end.
Definitely. So, I mean, just to underscore that point, that does lead to higher costs on up the food chain.
Right.
Sure.
So, you know, another point is people are wondering, should they immediately expect to go out and, you know, upsize maybe their main trash can? So you would probably both caution against that and just take a better look at what you're throwing out.
We would. Yeah, I think we want to take a wait and see approach. We're really working hard with processors, with those people who sell the commodities to understand what that ultimate list is going to look like. And so, as Gaelen said, it's really a small amount of contamination that can ruin the other material. But as far as capacity in the cart, I would say give it some time, wait and see. We're really asking people to keep doing what they're doing with just a few changes, like leaving out the wishful recycling. Our company uses a slogan, empty, clean, and dry, and that is really, really important right now. So does it mean you have to wash everything? No, but it means you need to rinse out that milk jug and then shake it till it's dry so that no milk residue is going to mold in that container or get on the paper and contaminate that. We hear about those things all the time that people think, oh, it'll be okay. Mm-hmm. But in truth, it really doesn't take a whole lot to ruin a lot of recycling. So we really want people to focus on the things we know are going to work right now. And one of the things we know is keeping material clean. And that means really no food residue at all in the recycling. And then putting the right materials in and keeping out that wishful recycling. I'm going to put in a plug for one of the things that we see all the time because there's just so much of it, and that is this clear, what we call a clamshell plastic.
And we have a sample of that.
And we've, oh great, Galen's got some samples. This kind of stuff is everywhere, and this is especially great because it's got food waste in it at the same time. But
not very well
this
cleaned.
material isn't recyclable, and I know you probably can't see, but there's this little chasing symbol on here. And so here's a little factoid that'll blow your mind. That doesn't mean it's recyclable. That just tells us the basic chemical composition of that material, and it was never intended to tell you it was recyclable, but the whole world has embraced that, and that's what we think. So we've got a lot of education to do to get people to the right place, but all of this clear plastic goes out. This is really painful for people to hear because there's so much of it. So I think the best thing that you can do is try as hard as you can not to buy materials in this. You know, send your comments back to people who put material in this. You know, do what you can to share your voice when you're talking about what you'd like to see material or food come in, because it probably doesn't need to be this.
Yeah. So if we can, now that we've started the prop portion of the chat, we'll go, so shiny cardboard, is that still okay?
Totally recyclable. So that's
Okay.
cardboard. It's great. We still have mills in the Northwest, so it's really nice if it can get turned back into cardboard products and paper products. So
Excellent.
cardboard's great.
Okay.
Yep.
So
This is a jug. This is a plastic jug, highly recyclable. It's the same material as your milk jugs, but it just has a color in it. So if it's empty, clean, and dry, even better. So it's really good.
And these are hard. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy to get everything clean. So I would say, you know, to get this clean, you've really got to take this off. And it's meant not to empty very much out at a time. So some people sort of just cut this off. Some people poke a hole in it. You can do a lot of other things. But, you know, again, rinse it out. Another really great thing to talk about for waste reduction is that I've discovered that while I rinse this out, I can get a couple more loads of wash
That's a
out of
good
it.
one,
If I
yeah.
fill it up with water, I let it all kind of dissolve in there, and then I've got a couple more loads of wash out of it while I'm doing the right thing for the recycling.
Right.
Great.
And you can also get that in a bigger container,
Absolutely.
which is going to save you some plastic.
Yeah.
So, and then another thing is, if you've started to see detergent is one of the things coming in these plastic pouches, a refill in a plastic pouch, and that plastic pouch is such a small amount of plastic compared to what a jug is, and so those are a really good option.
So now we have kind of these kind of waxy cardboard.
Right. And these are cartons, so anything that's a carton, it looks like it's paper, but really it's got a coating of plastic on the inside. And I bet you, oh, and I can hear it, there's also food on the inside. So not recyclable. They shouldn't have gone in your cart before, and they definitely shouldn't go in your cart now.
Yeah.
So anything with the carton, milk cartons, soup cartons, just could, anything that looks like
Juice boxes.
yeah, juice boxes, that's a good one, yeah. And the way you can tell is if it's holding liquid or it's holding food, it's obviously not paper because it would all drain through, so it's got plastic.
And you know, the interesting thing about these is that this is probably a good choice to buy, even though it cannot be recycled. Because this particular, it's called aseptic packaging, doesn't require refrigeration. So there are a lot of products that come in this that would otherwise need to be refrigerated. And I was just talking to an analyst with DEQ last week, and just the lack of the need for refrigeration alone saves far more resources than what you could do if you could recycle this. So still a good product, but we have to kind of re-educate people that some things are okay to throw away. We can't recycle it, but we're still saving resources by using it.
Certainly.
And that's a really hard pill to swallow. Hard for me too.
Right. Well, and it's one of the things that you make decisions about. Like if I know
Absolutely.
if I know I'm going to throw it away, is there something I would do differently? And
Right.
that's at the store. Think about that for each product. Where's it going to go?
So here's a question.
Oh,
shoot,
dripping milk.
shoot.
That's a really good example.
On your laptop.
That's
Sorry
fine.
about that. It's like action.
On cue.
So this is a plastic jug, so it is recyclable. It's pretty small though, but it's more than 8 ounces, so we will be able to pick it up on our line and it will get recycled. But as you notice milk's dripping out, please rinse it out. We have people who work there, so it smells awful. And once those drips of milk get on paper, the paper immediately starts rotting, so it's less and less valuable.
Yeah, and it's amazing how fast mold can grow in those products, and it's really dangerous. Now, this one, you know, milk, I'm not sure about. The bottle bill now accepts, I thought it was all single serving containers, but I don't think this has a deposit yet on milk. But lots more
Juice
things as of
and-
January 1 are included in the bottle bill and can be returned for a deposit. So that's a much better way. And the other great thing about that is when you do take material back to a bottle drop, you're actually sorting it. You're actually pre-sorting. So it actually is going to a plastics recycler in Oregon because it's a clean source and it's sorted.
It's pre-sorted.
Great.
Yep.
So again, the cutoff on the size is 8 ounces?
Yeah, and the reason for that is that the plastics become too small and they drop through our machinery.
So
They don't
that's
get
why this lid should come off and be thrown away, because it's going to probably come off. And you can see that this has also got some foil on the top, so it's kind of just a mess all around.
So make
wash
sure
it,
remove the
take
lid,
out the
wash
lid.
it.
This just isn't going to make it through the recycling process, and when it stays on the jar like this, it also isn't the same plastic as this. So plastics can't be recycled together.
Yeah,
And,
so
and they need to be separated.
When we're talking about contamination of kind of the plastic,
Yeah,
that's a good
lids.
example
Yep,
of that.
lids are
Okay.
contamination.
Right,
Yep.
right. And little small things like that will also get in between the paper and contaminate the paper.
So real quick, as I'm digging through this pile here,
Be careful.
we have we have a glass bottle.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up glass. So glass cannot go in our big blue bins. We get a lot of glass that comes through. It can't come through because it breaks, it gets in our machinery, and it cuts our people. So you can put this in your smaller bin. In some places, the smaller bins are red. In some places, I believe they're blue. Right? So in your smaller bin it can go. This is also a very pretty colored glass, and some people like Nuvo glass take these because they make them back into glasses.
Right. Yep.
So
the
there's
blue
some cool-
glass probably should always go someplace for more beneficial use.
Right. So please know glass is by weight our biggest contaminant. It weighs a lot, gets stuck in the machines, ruins thousands of dollars with the machines, and cuts people.
Yeah, and let's talk about the lid on this as well, because obviously this is a metal lid and it doesn't recycle with glass. Glass is highly recyclable, and we do have a facility in Oregon up in Portland called Glass to Glass where they're able to sort by color and they can sort little tiny pieces. But this kind of stuff is contamination for them. So you're really doing them a favor when you take that material off. Any time you take the lid off, you're going to be helping somebody.
So
And the lid-
a safe bet, just take the lid off before
Yeah.
it goes in.
Yep, it's a good rule of thumb.
So all these, some folks, after we published, the Statesman Journal published the story earlier this week, some people felt like, whoa, this kind of came out of the blue, but this has really been an ongoing problem, and this was really about all of the sort of folks in the recycling and reuse food chain coming together and saying, we need to make changes.
Right.
So how did
Correct.
that kind of come about?
I think it's been going on for the last several months since China did implement the crackdown, and it's been at a state level and a national level of conversations about what do we do next, because we were
Yeah.
relying on a system that got shut, basically, a door that got shut.
Right, and you know, it's not brand new to those of us in the industry, but the answers they're new and they're still forthcoming. So there's been a group meeting every week since September, I believe, that consists of DEQ and haulers and processors and all the stakeholders, and coming up with some sort of solution has been a difficult and unfinished process. So as we work through this, we really do want to get people the best information possible. We're just still working through it, and really February was really the first month where China just went no. And so they've been promising and promising, and they're really talking about levels of contamination. So where a MRF can generally, Gaelen, how much contamination can you get it down to?
We can get it down to, I think, about 5%, and they're asking for 0.5%,
0.5%,
which nobody, even people who really go slowly with their conveyor belts, put in a lot more, millions of dollars more in equipment, they just can't get
Yeah,
that
I
down.
mean, the processors are all working on it, but it does involve a lot of money. It involves a lot of labor, and it involves slowing the machinery down so then they can handle less. So it's really a multi-pronged problem, and we just want to make sure for right now that we don't cause anybody any anxiety about this, and we don't give an ultimate list quite yet, because we're still kind of working out what that is. And so I think to Galen's point about the stuff that's in there that's wishful recycling and contamination, for now, that's really the best thing you can be working on. And it's a huge help to do that.
Right.
So how are the haulers going to be reaching out to customers to sort of communicate?
Right, so we're working on that list right now. And so we will be sending that out to customers just as soon as we kind of, get everybody in the room and decide what that looks like. We'll get information out to customers. But if someone's putting in, I know yogurt tubs have been a source of misunderstanding. If you're putting a clean yogurt tub in right now, that's not going to be the big problem. The big problem is all those big giant pieces of plastic clamshell and the aseptics and the dirty material. Those are much bigger problems
And plastic bags.
than one yogurt tub.
Right.
And plastic bags are probably the biggest contaminant for a MRF, aren't they?
Right,
The biggest
right.
problem. They're kind of like the modern day tumbleweed, and you see them rolling down the highway. And there's a lot of air movement at a MRF, and those kind of fly around in the air and land in the machinery. And again, it's a real safety issue for your folks, isn't
Right.
it?
Well, and we do have to send someone in at every break to cut out the plastic bags that have wound around our machinery. So it's a huge problem. And we've been telling people that for several years now, but it just to get that message through is very tricky, apparently.
Yeah, and I know most of the grocery stores in the area have receptacles for
Right.
those.
And that's a
They
good
just-
place for
That's
it.
the best place.
Yeah. If it's clean and source separated and it goes to somebody who can use it, it's actually good material. And it's used in products like Trex decking, composite wood products, and a good product, but it just can't be sorted with the other recycling.
Right.
So what about some other stuff that you probably shouldn't put in the blue bin but can still be recycled, like shredded paper?
Right. So shredded paper is one of those things that's so small it falls through the machinery or it gets in between other stuff. So if people want their shredded paper to get recycled, they can bring it to us, and we will take it at our receiving dock and we'll make sure it gets recycled like we do with all the shred that we pick up from state agencies and businesses now.
And I know we've kind of allowed shredded paper in the curbside bin, and that probably has been a mistake all along. And so we're trying to correct that one right now, because it's a big contaminant in the plastic. You just can't separate it, can you, Gail?
Right.
From
Tiny
the
little
plastic.
pieces we don't
Yep.
have enough people to go through.
So remember that 0.5% contamination that's being accepted is really hard to achieve, and that paper is just exacerbating that problem.
Great. So really, I would say both of you would sort of tell consumers to really, this is the point where they can be more conscious about what they're picking up, and even maybe reaching out to these companies and saying, hey,
Yep.
this is not recyclable here. What can you do to change up the packaging?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
That is a big thing, and we want to make sure that people are aware that we don't have magic machines that turn everything they give us back into raw material. So that each thing they should think about, where's this going to go? Is this really going to be turned into something, or am I creating more trash and not even realizing it?
well, and you know, a lot of folks are saying, okay, so if China isn't taking this, you know, why don't we figure out how to use it in the U.S.? And that's not something you can wave a magic wand and have some factory appear and use this stuff.
Yeah.
But to your point, if we can get this material really clean, there will be more opportunity for domestic recyclers. So that will be an interesting way to go too, because we hear people say it's just too dirty for us to use the curbside stream. They're taking material like from the bottle bill, and the plastic recycler in Portland can use that. But they might be able to use a cleaner stream of recycling if we can get there. So, you know, it isn't just up to the sorters, though. I want to really reiterate that. It's really got to start with the people putting stuff in the cart.
Great. Well, I think we've addressed a lot of stuff. Anything either of you want to say before we part here? Or?
Empty, clean, and dry.
Clean and dry, we
There you go.
like
Empty,
that.
clean,
No
and dry.
trash, no
Yep.
glass.
That's right.
So put that, you know, in your kitchen above your trash can as your new mantra.
That's your new mantra.
There you
That's
go.
right.
Excellent.
Do it with yoga.
Well, if you have any additional questions, you can add them to the story or the Facebook post, and we will have some folks take a look at them and get you some answers. But otherwise, thanks for joining us.